Hey, welcome to Fantasy Football Live. I'm TJ Jefferson, here with Nathan Zagora, the fantasy consultant. We're going to get you guys ready for week 8 of the fantasy season by letting you know you should definitely start this week. So, Nate, what quarterback should they have in their starting lineups?
Well, this week you want to go with the guy whose jersey I'm wearing, Tony Romo of the Dallas Cowboys, absolutely on fire. Thanks to the ascension of Stone Cold Miles Austin into that starting lineup. In 2 games with Austin at wide receiver, Romo's got 662 yards passing and 5 touchdowns with 0 interceptions. He is lighting up fantasy scoreboards, and he should continue to do so this week against Seattle. Seattle's pass defense has been hit or miss, and it's been missed when they face good quarterbacks. Against Peyton, Cutler, and Kurt Warner, they've given up 291 yards and over 2 touchdowns per game passing. Look for Romo to stay hot, and you want to get him in your lineups.
And you know I have no problem with that whatsoever.
I know you do.
Do not, exactly. What running back should be in the lineup this week?
Well, let's turn back the clock time. This is a guy I never thought I'd have to even say to start, but frankly, he's been awful in 2009. But this week, he should be pretty good. I'm talking about LaDainian Tomlinson of the San Diego Chargers. Tomlinson not performing up to expectations, battled an injury earlier in the year, and has not scored since week 1. Last week, they gave him 8 carries inside the opponent's 5-yard line against Kansas City. Not exactly a great defense, 0 touchdowns. Well, that's going to change this week against the Oakland Raiders. The Raiders so far this year, absolutely struggling. They've given up 170 yards per game on the ground. They're 30th against the run and over a touchdown per game, 1.4 in fact, also 3rd most in the league. So when you look at it, you got to say, what happened to the Raiders last week? Can LT get a piece of that pie? Well, last week they gave up over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground to the Jets. Both running backs on the Jets, Sean Green and Thomas Jones, went for over 100 yards with a score. So look for LaDainian to do the same and finally give you that game you've been waiting for. Darren Sproles, not a bad flex option as well.
And you also like Matt Forte this week, right?
I do like Matt Forte. He's at the bye week Betty status, trying to get him jump-started going against the Browns. The Browns, awful against the run, 31st in the league, 171 yards per game and a touchdown per game on the ground. Ryan Grant just went for 148 and a score against them last week. So look for Matt Forte to finally get you that big game in terms of yards and the
And many fantasy owners have been waiting on that out of Forte. Next up, wide receiver. Which wide receiver is your start of the week?
Well, this week at wide receiver, I'm going to go with a guy who's playing very well in Buffalo right now, and I'm talking about Lee Evans. Ever since Ryan Fitzpatrick has taken over, Evans has been hot. Back-to-back weeks, he's had his best game of the year. 2 weeks ago, 4 catches, 68 yards, and a touchdown. Last week, 5 for 75 in the touchdown. You got to like that. And why I really like it is this. Ryan Fitzpatrick has targeted Evans 21 times in 2 games. In 5 games with Trent Edwards, only 28 targets for Evans. Now he goes against a Houston team, a little suspect against the pass. Look for Evans to have a very good game.
Okay, and you're also liking Miles Austin?
I'm liking Miles Austin. The guy's phenomenal. 16 catches, 421 yards, 4 touchdowns. Those are 2-week totals, TJ. Get him in there. He's on fire. I also like Torrey Holt going against the Tennessee Titans. The Titans, the worst pass defense in the NFL. Holt's been over 90 yards in 2 straight, over 100 yards in his last game. Look for him to keep that going.
You also like Donnie Avery against the Lions. Right?
Nice bye week, Betty. The Lions giving up 2.8 passing touchdowns per game this year. That, 2nd most in the NFL. Avery has caught each of the last 2 touchdowns thrown by Mark Bolger. Look for him to get a score this week.
Okay, what about tight end? Which tight end is looking good for a start?
Zach Attack Miller of the Oakland Raiders. Now, this is purely a matchup play. Miller himself has been pretty good this year, but up and down with Jamarcus Russell. While against the Chargers in 5 career games, he's top 60 yards or scored in every one of those. He's been over 80 yards 3 times, over 90 yards twice. The Chargers, weak against tight ends. They gave up 101 yards and a touchdown to Tony Scheffler on Monday night, 2 weeks ago, And last time that Miller played them himself, he went for over 90. Plus, they've given up 4 tight end touchdowns on the year, 3rd most in the league.
Okay. Now, what about defense?
Defense. Listen, Arizona, they're getting after the quarterback. Sacks, turnovers, forcing interceptions. No team turns the ball over more than the Carolina Panthers. This week's opponent for the Cardinals, Jake Delhomme, fighting for his job. And this is the team that it all fell apart against in the playoffs last year. So look for Delhomme to struggle. Cardinals a great start. And then I also like, just from matchups, Chicago at home against the Cleveland Browns, and then San Diego at home against the Oakland Raiders.
There you have it. Those are our top starts for Week 8. For the fantasy consultant Nate Zagora, I'm TJ Jefferson. Tune in next week to Fantasy Football Live.